Okay, everybody, we'll get this show on the road. First of all, thank you all for coming. This is a great turnout. It's a better turnout than we expected. Typical sailors, we ran out of wine within about 3 minutes of the first few people coming in here, so that's pretty standard. Before we move on, I'd just like to thank Jen and Bridget and Kate and Jonathan and especially the service staff here at North Sails who helped put all this thing together. It's not easy to put nights like this together. It seems simple, but of course we all figure out a way to make it complex. So anyway, it's a pleasure to have everybody here. Before we start, show of hands. How many people consider themselves single-handed, double-handed, or even short-handed sailors in this room? How many? Holy crap. Okay, well, you guys come talk. I'm going to go out there and listen. The first thing I want to say is it feels sometimes, because people like me get out in front of audiences and talk about shorthanded and double-handed sailing. I'm doing it because I love it, and I like kind of giving back and trying to let people know at least potentially another way of looking at how to get around a race course. We did not invite or invent double-handed sailing or single-handed sailing. There's a lot of people, Tristan Molyneux and Joe Cooper, a couple of people I saw here tonight, Phil Hayden. Most of you have been double-handed sailing longer than I. I happen to have the stage tonight, so you have to listen to me. That's as far as this goes. We've been reasonably successful at it. I only know one way to go sailboat racing, and that's to take it pretty seriously. So we're just going to try to give you as much of really the trickle down of how we put a project together. And it's a little different format tonight. First of all, a couple housekeeping items. If you need to go to the head, it's right down that hall off to the side. There should be some more beer and wine. Help yourself. We're going to try to get this rolling and get out of here in about an hour and a half or so. We're going to try a little different format, and we have some terrific speakers and really diverse set of speakers. That was the whole goal tonight, not to just sit there and listen to me in the course of a night, but to listen to different versions of what double-handed sailing is all about and different strengths on a boat of what double-handed sailing is all about. Starting out with the youth of the night, Ellie Driver. Ellie sitting here in the middle. Just turned 21 years old, right? Ellie and her mom, Leslie, are here tonight. They just flew in from England. Ellie's going to tell a remarkable story about how we don't have to wait till later in life to start to give back, and what she has done to help develop double-handed racing, especially in the area where she lives, sailing with family. And also, I think, if I get this right, are there 90 double-handed boats signed up for the Fastnet this coming year? And she's part of the organization of putting all that together. So just a completely different angle as to sailing, I think, than any of the rest of us could possibly do. Suzy Leech to the left. On her resume, she puts up with me on a double-handed boat. That would be top of the list. Suzy has an amazing list of accomplishments. She and I met back in 1995 when we were both sailing the America's Cup out in San Diego. And when I first chose a partner, I like to call it partners, co-skipper for double-handed racing, when I started doing it, Suzy was at the top of the list because in 1995 she was the bow person on the all-women's team, Bill Koch's all-women's team. And to be the bow person on those version of America's Cup boats was one of the scariest and frankly dumbest things you could ever do in your life. And so if she was that fearless to be able to do that, then I figured she could put up with anything that I could throw at her out here in Rhode Island Sound. So Suzy, thank you for coming. And then finally, my friend Glenn Walters is part of Jeannot, and Jeannot is a huge part of double-handed racing up here, or especially has become a big part of double-handed racing. Not only do they produce the 3300, to which all of us sail, but Glenn is giving back. He's getting boats on the race course. He is sponsoring events. He is really vocal source of enthusiasm for sailing and for double-handed racing. And like I said, we've all come into this kind of later in life and figuring out how much fun this is later in life, probably a lot later than a large percentage of you here in the audience. But I think Glenn, again, offers a unique perspective that from the boat side, from the boat builder's side, and from the sponsor's side of why he's trying to do this and why he's giving back to an audience like us. So what we're going to do is each of us are going to talk for about 15 or so minutes, and then we'll open up to the goal here is to get as many questions out as possible. We want to hear from you. The upsides of nights like tonight is we can get a bunch of subjects out there, especially with a diverse set of speakers, but we don't get into specifics, right? Probably if somebody's here to figure out how to jibe in over 20 knots in a Pearson 36 with a symmetrical spinnaker and 2 people, we're probably not going to talk about that tonight, but it doesn't mean that we can't talk about it in the future. So the last slide of the night is actually all of our contact information. And I'd like to add that we're taping this. This is all going to be recorded, so it'll be, whether it's for better or for worse, this will be around for a long, long time, thanks to the internet. So anyway, why double-handed sailing? Why for me? I was intrigued with double-handed sailing mainly because the rumor of the Olympics happening. It's one thing that has never been on my resume, which was going to the Olympics. And several years ago, when there was a lot of talk of possibly doing a co-ed double-handed Olympics, it got my attention. The other thing is, when I sailed around the world, one of the great features of sailing around the world, the 3 times I did it, and maybe the only great feature of sailing around the world 3 times, is you get to do everything on the boat again. Because I think when we grow up, we get pigeonholed into drivers and trimmers and navigators and bow people, and you get kind of tagged into that one spot. Well, when you do a shorthanded, and we were 9 people going around the world on a 70-footer, it's pretty shorthanded, but you do everything. You're bailing the bilge, you're cooking, you're on the bow, you're trimming, you're grinding, you're driving, you're doing everything. So I kind of got hooked on that again. I didn't want to get back into just being a driver or just being a tactician. And double-handed sailing, for me, allowed me to stay active, get on the bow, get down below, work with the navigation, do a little bit of everything on the boat, and that, to me, is the thing that kind of got me going and keeps me coming back and doing this type of sailing. Suzy and I, like I said, we started off doing this, I think, 4 or so years ago, and we were lucky enough to hook up with Jeannot North America at the time. They kind of passed the baton on to Glenn. We got this great little 33-foot boat, and we've had a blast with it ever since. So my part of tonight's talk is to give you kind of my top 7 things that I do to prepare to go double-handed racing. And like I said, I'm a little, as my wife Melissa in the back of the room can attest to, I'm a little paranoid about every single detail on a sailboat. Maybe not about cleaning my room or folding laundry, but for sure, boat racing is a detail thing for me. And so I'm just going to pass on what I think the most important 7 details are to prepare a boat to go out and race. And when I say race, I think we're talking about, the Ida Lewis distance race and the Block Island race and around Edgartown race and the solo twin and things like that. It's probably a little different list if I were to do the Bermuda 1-2, which I know there's representatives for the Bermuda 1-2 here tonight. So that would probably be a little different list, but I think this list really pertains to these kind of 24-hour-ish style races, which is really what I would say the majority of us do, especially when it comes to shorthanded. Number 1, pretty easy, pick and prepare your boat. We sail a boat that really kind of caters to double-handed sailing. Everything's set up to the cockpit, everything comes back in the cockpit. It's really organized. Even the sail size it's a low aspect rig. This boat was really set up for 2 people, so we were kind of lucky. But I think if you have a boat and it is set up to race and you have a decent PHRF rating, so if you have a Pearson 36 again and you do well on Tuesday nights up at Barrington Yacht Club, there is no reason you can't do well going offshore and doing a 24-hour race. So pick your boat, prepare your boat, whatever your boat. As long as you've got a pretty decent PHRF rating and you kind of work at your preparedness, there's really no reason why any style of boat can't go out there and double-handed race. Second thing is choosing your partner, and I kind of did this a little differently. Once the Olympics and the co-ed Olympics got pushed to the side, actually got taken off the table by the Olympic Committee. Well, first we started with Suzy. She and I did several. We were very successful. We were having a blast. She couldn't make one event, but Suzy, and she's going to explain better than I chose Suzy because I thought she, first of all, had guts, and secondly, guts / no fear. And the second thing is that she had a set of credentials that was probably not exactly what I had. She's a real navigator. And I'm a boat speed person. I'm a prepare boat speed type of person and a tactician. I think there's a big difference between a tactician and a navigator. Deals with the weather, deals with the instruments on board the boat. I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'm going to let you explain it a little bit better. But Suzy was and she's a boat handler. Clearly, you don't do the bow on an America's Cup boat and not know how to get a spinnaker up and down. So Suzy was a great and obvious first choice for me. I also, when she couldn't make it, I got my brother Brad is here tonight, who's Sail Newport, the executive director of Sail Newport. He and I hadn't sailed together in forever. We sailed against each other and we scream at each other from long, long ways across the water. I'm sure you've all heard that at one stage or another. But we took the opportunity to do a couple of these races together, and he became kind of a part of our team. And we had a blast, as you would imagine. You find crews in the most unlikely places sometime, and I actually figured out I liked my little brother again. And so it was really fun, and we can't wait to do it again. And then this summer, neither of them can make it, and on Glenn's suggestion, this girl, Sarah Stone, who is an up-and-comer, I think she's 25, 26 years old, really fit girl who's taken on offshore sailing and inshore sailing. She wants to be a professional sailor. So she said yes to come and do a race that these two guys couldn't do. And again, just she had a different set of her skill set on board the boat. I made different than mine. So I shifted my skill set to allow her to be who she was. And then I kind of filled in the gaps. It's really been fun for me to be able to do that, to be able to shift how I sail a boat and to allow for other people to thrive around me. But anyway, I think picking a partner and picking a partner that is diverse and not like you is a really important feature. So the third thing is race prep. And race prep is really, it's hard, right? It starts with signing up for races, which for some reason a lot of these events make as hard as humanly possible. And all the way down to the paperwork, to the PHRF ratings, to, you know, I made a list here, and again, this entire presentation will be online at some place, at some time. But I highlighted one thing, and this is all stuff that you have to do, but to me, you have to do it like now. If you're going to race this summer, I'm starting to do this now. As Glenn knows, I'm starting to do this list now, because the last thing I want to do is be stressed right before the race starts, and I want to make this fun. So I try to spread this out as far as I can. For those with existing boats, I want to give you a challenge. This spring, go pull up your boat along the dock and take every single thing off the boat. And the pile you make, it will blow you away. You will take 1,000 pounds off of your boat by just strip it. Start from scratch and put stuff back on that you need. I did this with my father a number of years ago on his Pearson 39, and he's still taking stuff off the boat as we speak. Exactly. So anyway, this race prep I think is really important, and it's important to start early. Start early and be really thorough about it, and it'll pay huge benefits. The second thing is practice. So this dreaded P word, we actually practice. And this is actually a video of us practicing on the 3300. The first year we did it, we do practice a little. This is the first time we ever did a successful drop without dropping the kite in the water. We did it different. We did what we call a letterbox. We just let the tack go and pull it, and Suzy's down below. Brad is doing the video, and Suzy's down below. We never practice with 2 people, ever. We always go with three or four people, because I don't think you don't get anything done with only 2 people when you're practicing. Sure, we'll do maneuvers during a practice with just 2 of us, but getting the boat off the dock, getting the sails up, getting the rig tuned, shifting gears, prepping for the next. We want to start reaching now. Let's put a staysail up. If you have more people, you can start banging out 10 times more work while on the water rather than just 2 people. As we know, 2 people is hard. So practice with multiple crew, I think. But then during that practice, when you want to try to do a takedown, one of those multiple crew can actually do video that you can go back and look at. Just grab your phone and pull it out, or or just stand out of the way. You'll notice in the back here, I don't know what he's doing during this whole. This is Glenn crouching down. He's either sick to his stomach at the time. I still, to this day, we have no idea what you're doing back there. You dropped a nickel into the ground. So anyway, I think that's a key, that practice is hugely important. All the maneuvers, all the sail settings, understanding the sail settings, writing stuff down, actually taking notes, things like that. But do it with multiple people. Do it with more than 2 people, and I think you'd be much more successful. So then I have 2 modes, the night before mode and the day of mode. The night before mode, I get everything, the final stages done. I go to the boat. Typically, I'll go by myself. I'll even say, like Suzy, Brad, I don't need you. And I'll go down and I'll hank the jib on. I'll put the sheets out. I'll make sure that the boat is completely prepped. So the next morning, all we have to do is go down, step on the boat, and go sailing. And this all happened because one of the very first events we did here, it was a windy Ida Lewis race. We almost missed the start because I've been sailing with 5, 8, 10, on Henneman, the J-boat, we sailed with 34 people. So you could delegate, right? And so all of a sudden you get down to the boat first thing in the morning, it's like, holy crap, I gotta remember how to put spinnaker sheets out. The little things like that. And it's like spinnaker sheets, jib sheets, hank on the jib. Oh, that's right, we gotta put the reef in the main. So I do all that stuff the night before, everything. So essentially the boat is ready the night before. So then the morning of, we run grid files in the morning. We know the weather. We've already talked about the strategy in the race. We just bring the computer to the boat and make sure that we're just ready to go. Get relaxed, easy, leave the dock. We probably have the right sails set up because we've been following the weather for the last couple days. We'll have another team strategy meeting. In essence, actually it's really interesting. Suzy has a totally different feel and look to the race course than when I sail with Brad. So it's really fun for me to have a team meeting. How are we going to approach at least leg number 1 in this race? Because you better be prepared at least 1 leg in advance, or you're not going to be ready. We always, and I mean, we have never not changed a jib or used the excuse of being double-handed ever for a maneuver, whether it's a jibe, attack, a tactical situation, whatever it is. We treat the boat as if it's a crewed boat. We never say, yeah, but we're double-handed, maybe we shouldn't do this. If we need to change kites, we change kites. We need to peel to the 0, we peel to the 0. And we've practiced it and we're ready for it. And hopefully we're ready far enough in advance. And if we're prepared before the event is going to start, before the racing is going to start, then we're going to be good to go. Last couple things is the right inventory, and I think we're in North Sales, so I have to at least pay the bills here. We really have tried to absolutely minimize the sails that are on board the boat, because you can't change sails. You can't have 3 different jibs. You can't have 5 different spinnakers. You have to try to find as big a gap in the wind range as possible per sail. So we really only sail with 1 AP jib at this stage. If it's windy out, we'll bring a number 4, a regular heavy weather jib. We sail with 2 staysails, 1 code 0 and 2 A sails, and that's it. And fathead mainsail, actually the fathead mainsail is sitting over here on the floor, our mainsail. 1 AP jib, we actually have a reef in this jib that if it got windy and we didn't want to change to a heavy weather jib, or maybe didn't even bring the heavy weather jib, we could just reef this jib. and then 2 A sails. And we used to only sail with 1 A sail, and we switched to 2. It's not that we peel sails very much, but we almost ran over the first, we did run over A sail once and almost destroyed it and had to drop out of a race because of it. So we always bring another one, not only for a little different wind condition, but for a backup. Couple staysails, and then of course a code 0. And a code 0 is, you know, it's the sail that we all talk about all the time. It's a sail that there'll be many races that we'll never use, and then it'll be a sail that'll absolutely win you a race. If it's code 0 weather, you know, we reached out of the bay once, I think during a solo twin, and we were gone because we had this beautiful, beautiful code 0. So I think you have to have it. Again, it's a sail that you don't use all the time, but when you do use it, Lord knows it's going to give you a nice break. I say this to Suzy and to Brad all the time. If we're doing well in a race, we just keep reminding ourselves, avoid the big mistakes. And we have made a couple major mistakes, and this is what gets us into it. When you're double-handed, you make a mistake, and as we all know, it's magnified times 1,000. And so, and worse yet, somebody could get hurt, or you could really break some stuff. So we're always talking about avoiding the big mistakes, and it's usually rounding corners. It's usually during sail changes. This is, you know, actually this photo, this photo led to the next photo, but this photo was running out of Narragansett Bay, and I think maybe the first Ida Lewis distance race we did, and we're coming into the leeward mark right now, and essentially the two of us are looking at each other going, holy shit, we have to take the spinnaker down. And we sailed almost a half a mile beyond the actual mark. And once we did get it down, we had spinnaker sheets hooked around the rudder and everything else. So listen, we all learn by mistakes. I think it's the best way to learn, right? So we learned, and now we're pretty good at anticipating. You only have to do this once. You only have to get a spinnaker sheet wrapped around your rudder once to figure you don't want to do that again. And yeah, so it's just a constant theme on board the boat. Avoid the big mistakes. And then a big one for us is to have fun, right? And to pick events. So this is a year and a half. This is actually in the middle of COVID, I think. We all went out to, this is my wife, Melissa, and Suzy and I. And you can just see in the background, we're towing Alchemist behind our powerboat. Went out and did the Around Edgartown race during Edgartown Race Week and just had this kind of cool, different adventure. Pick a schedule that's good for you, that's going to be fun, that you know other boats are going to participate in. Talk to your friends here tonight. You know, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and Glenn's going to talk a little bit more later about maybe putting a whole series together. But pick a schedule, pick it early, and pick something that's fun and different. This was a 3-day adventure out to Edgartown, which was just a blast. Plus, we won the race, even to put icing on the cake. So it was, so pick a good schedule and have fun with it. And then finally, when people say, why are you successful double-handing, is because I make it as hard as possible, which means, A, we don't make excuses for anything we do, and we don't sleep. We don't, you know, I bring 5 peanut butter sandwiches on board, and I spend about 10 seconds down below total the whole race. I make it physically and mentally as hard as I can because I like to push it. So, but it doesn't have to be that way. Again, you pick your partner. When you pick your partner, you're also kind of picking a cadence to how you want to sail the race. Some people have way more fun. You know, this is actually after a race that Brad and I did the Around the Island race, the Sail Newport Around the Island race, and we had a couple beers in the middle of the race. So yeah, we can take it slow sometimes. But you know, it's just pick. You don't have to be crazy, but at the same time, if you want to be, you can be. You know, and when we finish a race at 8, 9, 10 in the morning, one of these 24-hour races like I told you about, it's pretty close to carry yourself off the boat. But the hardest part of some of these races is driving home sometimes, because I am physically and mentally spent, but I would have it no other way. And for many people here, you would do it differently, and I applaud that as well. But make it as hard as you want it to be, and make sure that at the end of the race, you've gotten out of it what you want to get out of it. And very often it's not going to be first, second, or third. Very often it's going to be that experience with your partner, or pushing your boat, or learning something new and different, or just seeing the scenery. It doesn't matter. Anyway, these are my top 7 things to think about. I'm going to pass this on to Ellie here in a second. Before we do, I'd like to, if there's any questions, and we'll do questions at the end too, by the way, if we need to. Are there any questions on any of these things that somebody wants to raise their hand? And okay, perfect. So we're going to keep moving on. All right. Oh, by the way, we did one small modification to the boat for this year. But we're not going to talk about that anyway. We're keeping that under wraps, right? All right. So Ellie, like I said, Ellie was the Yachts Person of the Year by Yachts and Yachting magazine in England this past year. Just turned 21 years old. She's a double-handed sailor. She sails with her dad. She was the youngest skipper to ever finish the Around Britain and Ireland race this past year. So this is kind of a special kid, and I think kid, sorry. Am I getting sued for saying like that? Yeah, okay. Woman, sorry, woman. Come on, she's a kid. So we just wanted a different perspective tonight. And her perspective is as much about building a community as it is about the actual racing itself. So all the way from England, Ellie, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Well done. Right hand.
Got it. Oh, that's fun. Where's my little dot? Told me to stand here. Thanks again. Firstly, I'd like to say this is my first public speaking, so jumping in the deep end, just be nice to me. I also want to say thank you very much to Bluenose Yachts and North Sails for bringing me and Mum out here from the UK. Me a good fun couple of days. So I'm kind of here to talk about the UK double-handed scene, the youth initiatives that we've made, and what it's like to sail with family, because I, as Ken's just said, sail with my dad. Back in 2005, Rourke, which is the Royal Ocean Racing Club, made a big step in double-handed sailing. They brought in a double-handed class to the Rourke Fastnet. And this was a big drive to all of the growth that's happened in the fleet. Henry Bombay in 2021 decided that we should have a UK double-handed offshore series. And it was designed by Corinthian sailors, pro sailors, boat dealers, and race committee. We created it from 7 races from the Rourke and the Jog, which is the junior offshore group. And we made it from these 7 races because in the Solent we're very saturated with races. And we've got lots of double-handed boats, but everyone was kind of doing different races on the weekend. And to create good sailing, you kind of want everyone in the same race. So we chose 7 races, and we've got different categories. So we've got the youth category, the mixed, the Corinthian, the masters, and the Geno category. And we run the series of sponsors. So sponsors have access to all of the sailors, their opinions about kit, and the sailors have access to the deals and the pros of sponsors and dealing with them. We created this series to create a community. It's quite often when you're double-handed, you might know a couple of friends from the dock or mainly just your co-skipper. So by knowing the rest of the fleet, you're not the only boat out there, and you get to know a lot more other people like you were if you were fully crewed racing. We run trainings and weather briefings. So it's a good way for us all to learn together and to improve. And we use the trainings as a good way to involve youth. We encourage people to have 3 on the boat or 4 on the boat instead of 2 to give the opportunities for some youth to see what it's actually like. Here on the left is me, Kate, and Conrad, who run the series, and then Henry as well. Now, double-handed sailing has been growing massively since the COVID lockdown. In the UK, when we all came out of the lockdown, you could go training with one other person, so it meant that double-handed sailing, training and racing could go ahead when fully crewed boats couldn't. Fully crewed boats started to migrate into the double-handed scene to see what it was like. So from the introduction to the double-handed class in 2005 from Rourke, as you can see on the graph, there's been a massive growth spurt in double-handed attendance. So 2023, this year, there's going to be 88 boats on that start line at double-handed, which is a great achievement and is sure for some good racing. In comparison to the Sydney Hobart, 2 years ago they didn't have a double-handed class, and this year they only just let the double-handed actually compete for the overall cup. So Rourke have really made the staggering growth that has happened in the UK. So this year, Dad and I raced the 7-star round Britain Island race. So it's a 2,000-mile race. Round Britain Island took us 14 days and it's only supposed to take us 10. On the left-hand side is the 5 female co-skippers that took part in the race. From the left to the right, we've got Deb Fish, who sailed on Tigris, Maggie Adamson, who sailed on... Deb Fish sailed on Bluenose, Maggie Adamson sailed on Tigris, and then Shirley to my right and Dee to my left, who sailed on Rocket together on their 33. Last year in the series, we had 22% of the competitors were female and 25% were youth, and we're hoping to expand on that this year with our 35 boats who are already signed up for the series. We're very fortunate to have tight, close racing with a tight IRC band, and as well as the 27 Sunfast 33s, which are going to be in the Solent this year, which is pretty incredible. In the RBI, 70% of the boats were double-handed, and it shows how competitive double-handed racing is in comparison to fully crewed, when in the Rourke season points last year, the top 3 were double-handed boats, and 8 out of the top 10 were also double-handed boats. So I think double-handed is pretty good for youth, and I'm one of them. It's a good way to learn every single role on the boat. If you're fully crewed, you might learn 1 or 2, but especially for us girls, you might not always be able to learn all of them. Whether you believe it or not, it's true. And it gives you a sense of freedom. When the other person is sleeping, you're basically solo sailing, and for a lot of these youth, it can really help them out and make them feel like they've achieved something. In the UK, we're really privileged to have lots of youth initiatives that have started. We've got Rourke, who have made their Griffin initiative, who I'm a part of the committee for, and Jog, who've made their Generation Jog. We've also got Tigris, which is run by a guy called Gavin, who's on the left. He's got Wave Train, this boat here, and he's accompanied there by his youth sailors from last year. And he lends the boat out to 2 people, male and female, under 25, for every race. Incredible opportunity, and it's really, really generous of him, and it's quite a personal aim of his, and we all support it very much. Over the past year and this year, it's quite obvious that all of these youth initiatives that were made separately are starting to be brought together. It's better if they're brought together because then we can make use of the resources that are available in the Solent and make the best opportunities that we can for the youth. And it's really about encouraging and inspiring the new sailors of today. Now, I'm a youth, 21 years old, and for me, achieving these races an incredible achievement. It gives you a sense that you've done something which you almost shouldn't have been able to do, and you've done it. And maybe people didn't expect you to do it, but you ignored them and you did it anyway. I go to uni in Southampton, studying maritime engineering, and I'm the yachting captain there. And all I do there is try and help people to have the same opportunities that I've had. And I know how much I love it and how much it helps me, and I just want the same for them. So I started sailing in dinghies in Oppies when I was about 6 years old in a small place called Triada Bay in North Wales. I was taught by my dad and my pops, and me and Dad used to go out sailing in Mirror called Jammy Dodger. I didn't really like racing. We used to go out and he'd be like, "No, Ellie, we're not going racing. We're just going for a sail." Unbeknown to me, he'd start the race, we'd be winning the race, and he'd be like, "Ellie, we're winning the race now. Should we just carry on?" But he knew I was too competitive to say no, so we would, and that's how it all started. And it's really special to now be sailing double-handed together on Chit. At the middle picture, we transitioned to 420s. That was mine and Rachel's first international event in Athens. And you can see I had a capsize and didn't quite go so well, but spinnaker was fine. Sturdy North spinnaker, that one. The picture on the right is our first race in Chili Pepper, 4 days after we commissioned the boat. We're sailing it shorthanded, me, Dad, and our friend Philip. And we won the race. And Rourke phoned us up going, "Who are you?" And we're like, "Don't really know, we just turned up and it's happened." Ended up in a jibing match with Henry and Shirley at the south side of the island. It was the round the island race, but ours is the Isle of Wight, not Newport. I've been to some amazing places, and I've been really lucky that my family has travelled all over the world and all over the UK. And 5 years ago, I was here in Newport doing the 420 Worlds. I've been to Fremantle in Australia, and I've learnt so much in dinghies, and to be able to use those learnings and bring them into bigger boats is been a really good experience. Now, me and Dad started racing double-handed 2 years ago and chucked into the deep end. And he had done a lot of racing and we didn't have that much confidence. We didn't really know the boat. So just to finish the races was a big thing, to get over the sleep deprivation, to get over some tricky wind conditions. If we finished the race, it was amazing. Once we did more racing, we were getting a bit more competitive, and we learnt more about the boat. And one thing about the 33 is if you give it the sail and you give it the time and you put more power into it, the boat will go. It's amazing. When you first come into a class and you're not really sure, you ask someone who knows the boat. And Dad contacted a North sales guy in England called Ronan. And Ronan, we're having some trouble with the jib on the Tough Luff. It keeps coming out. Can't drop it easily. Someone's got to be on the bow. I want to go to Hanks. What should I do? I don't know if you remember this, Ken, but Dad emailed you. And he went, "Ken, what do you think about Hanks? I want to go to Hanks." And Ken went, "Yeah, Hanks all the way. That's it. These are the ones you should get." So we were the first 33 in the UK to get Hanks, and now everyone's got Hanks. Adrena was another one of our big learnings. Adrena's a navigation software. At the start, we used Adrena to go from A to B and plugged it in and did what Adrena said to do. Now we're using Adrena about the tide, about the wind bends, about here was tracking the other boats on the RBI to see if they were going quicker than us and where they were going. And whether it works or it doesn't work, as a team, you've got to work together. And the highs are great and you celebrate them together, and the lows are not so great, but you work through it together and you get through the other side. So I sail with my dad. We got chilly when lockdown happened and all the 420 international events were cancelled. And Dad was like, "Right, that's it. I've had enough of your sailing. We're going to go sailing together." And we got chilly. Now, me and Dad are great sailing partners. We know each other really well, and I know when he's going to get hangry, and he knows when I'm going to get hangry. Something that you really need out of a co-skipper is someone that you trust and you respect, and that's what we've got with each other. It's not just us, though. We've got a group of co-skippers with us, and I also think it's really important to sail with not just one person and to learn what other people do. Everyone does something differently, and you might learn something new, and you always will. Whether you think you won't, you definitely will, because we learn something new every day. The picture on the left is when we finished the Round Britain Island race. The sense of achievement that brought is something I never experienced before. That was something amazing. And the picture on the right was when we actually won our first race overall. Double-handed, fully crewed, whatever, won it. It was the Rourke Morgan Cup. It's a 160 nautical mile race from Solent to Dartmouth. And we beat Dee and Shirley by about 15 seconds in the end on handicap over 22 hours or something. It was incredibly close. And we got a nice new A4 2 weeks before. And we were going along about 120 degrees going, oh, this is nice with the masthead up, but the boat could take more. I was like, Dad, if we want to win this race, we've got to put up that new A4. He wasn't too happy with me, going, no, Ellie, no, we're doing just fine. We haven't spun out, we're absolutely fine. I'm like, no, Dad, that's going up. I put it up. He didn't say anything till we finished the race. But that was the first race when everything came together. We hadn't made any big mistake. We'd done everything right. We'd prepared the boat before, and it put it all together, and it showed us that we could do it, and we could race against these top Olympians and round the world sailors if we put in the time and effort and trusted each other. Now, Chili Pepper isn't just me and Dad. It's quite the family affair. We've got my mum, Leslie, in the front row here, and my sister, Georgie. They're both great at helping out with the social media, but Mum also with her banana bread and sausage rolls, which are pretty legendary in the handball. We gave Dee a banana bread before the RBI, and she can attest to that. Chili Pepper I document it online on Instagram and Facebook and my blog and vlog. And at the start it was just for family and friends, 50 people would watch it, and it was for them to see what sailing's like, because a lot of them don't sail and they don't want to know what it's like. So now it's kind of grown and the whole world seems to be watching it, but I love to show people that they can do what they want to do. People told me I couldn't do the Fastnet. People told me I couldn't do the RBI. But you prove them wrong. You show that you can do it, and you do the next one. And family and friends are also really useful for shore crew. There's only 2 of you on the boat, and you still got all the jobs for a fully crewed boat. And they want to help you, they want to be there, and they want to support you. And they're good for encouraging you around the racing, but also as a shore team, helping you prepare for the race and getting you back to one piece at the end. Now, it's not just me and Dad that sail as a family on the Solent. There's also Duncan and Peter Bacon, who are father and son. They've just finished their Royal Transatlantic. Over on the left, there's Justin and Chris Wolfe, who are actually from here in America, and they sail Red Ruby and come across to the UK for a couple of weeks at a time and sail against us. There's also Richard Palmer, who's going to sail with his daughter Sophie in the Rourke Fastnet this year. They were the Rourke Boat of the Year last year, so it'd be good to have another father and daughter team. I just want to round up with why I like double-handed sailing so much. I'm a fidgety person and I like to have things to do, and double-handed is definitely that. You've always got something to do. If you're sitting around, then you've not done enough. You get to be involved in all aspects of the boat, from planning to racing to put it back together at the end, to the highs and lows. You get to do it all. It's very much a team sport, and that's not just you and your co-skipper, that's you, your co-skipper, and your whole team outside of that, and all of your followers and people that are helping you along the way. But the bond that you create with your co-skipper is something really special that I don't think a lot of people that don't double-handed sail will understand. Thanks.
Does anybody have any quick questions for Ellie, or we'll wait till the end? Does anybody have anything they want to ask?
That was really your first presentation?
Yeah. Thank you.
I was going to say the same thing. When you run for Prime Minister of England, we have just heard your first public speaking. Leslie, you should be very proud of this young woman. Really, really great. And I think the big takeaway for me is you don't have to wait till you're retired to be giving back and helping run races. I mean, a lot of times it's kind of this movement is once you've kind of gotten out of competitive sailing. Here's starting competitive sailing, and like she said, 88 boats going to be in the Fastnet race, and it's because of people like her. So, yep, go, yep, Joe.
Hi. Can you identify roughly whether the RORC went out and sold double-handed in some way to recruit more boats to the Fastnet, or did the double-handed community go to them? Which way did that sort of supply-demand go to get up to nearly 90 boats in however many short years it is?
So I can't really explain for when it happened in 2005 because I was 3. But since COVID, we've created this community. So we've got a double-handed nationals, which is made up of 2 weekends. We use one weekend that's already in the calendar, and then we want our own weekend. So we asked Rourke to put on our own weekend. So Rourke started it, but it's definitely now the double-handeds are now pushing it. They used to not have the ability to put 2 skippers on the entry list. So now if you go onto a Rourke entry list, you can see both skippers, you can see both co-skippers. So it started with Rourke. I'm not too sure if double-handed started the initial thing, but it's definitely Rourke alongside it, and it's us all really working together now. Yeah.
Ellie, why do you think the French are so good at short?
I think they've got a really good setup over there of training, boats to sail. It's quite hard to beat it, to be honest. We've got the IRC double-handed Europeans this year, and it's basically the British against the French. So we'll see what happens then.
Never heard of that before.
It's new this year. So it's
You're dating yourself. I've never heard of British against the French.
Sailing.
I just think the French don't like each other. That's why they just don't like sailing with each other. So that's what I think it is. All right. Well, yeah, one more in the back.
Yeah. Can you talk about Hank-on sails? Why Hank-on jibs are the way to go? Because I've been trying to graduate from Hank-on jibs for a very long time.
I think Ken can probably help, but I'll give my side of it. So we had a couple of issues when the jib would come out the tough fluff at the head of the jib. And that especially when you were trying to drop the sail, if the sheet tension was too much and there was too much pressure in the sail. But our main reason was actually when you were coming to dropping the spinnaker. Hoisting the spinnaker. When you hoist the spinnaker, you want to drop the jib as soon as you can to set the spinnaker. And you might hoist the spinnaker from the rig and then come back and help with the sheet at the back. But then if you don't have hanks, then you've got to go back to the bow to then pull the jib down so it doesn't go in the water. And with hanks, you go, right, here's the clutch, flip it open, right, jib's on the water, jib's on the boat. Even if the edge of the jib is in the water, the jib's still connected to the boat. So for us, and definitely for learning for me and Dad, it was about eliminating the things that could go wrong. And as someone came across that was a fully crewed boat and goes, oh, why don't you do this and this? We've done this. It's like, yes, it's great, but you do have 8 people, and this way works for us. And as long as it works for you and you're happy with it, and then I don't see why you shouldn't do what works for you.
And before you become Prime Minister, can you come sell sails for us too at the same time?
Sure. Have a job out of uni.
Ellie, we'll hear more from you afterwards, but that was spectacular. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mom, you should be very proud. That's pretty impressive. All right, so Suzy, you got a tough act to follow here, pal. Yeah, so that's it for the night. Thank you very much. No.
Gotta go. Sorry, we're going to go drink some more.
I already introduced Suzy, so there's not much more to say. Her legend kind of precedes her. My partner on Alchemist, Suzy Leech.
I don't have my glasses, that's right. Okay, there we go. A little bit, is this what I'm saying? A little bit of a precursor as well. We never rehearsed this, so there's a lot of things that you've already heard from Kenny that I might say the same, but at least we agree on something. And I totally agree on the fact that that's a very hard act to follow. So please be patient. I was asked to speak about division of responsibilities. And to me, that really starts with what your skill set is. And skill sets, they come from your experience. And that just comes from what you've done before. And it just comes to say that people come into double handing from different places. Some people are very intentional about it. They want to be, this is what they love. They love shorthanded sailing. They study all these skills. They learn them. That's not me. That's not where I came from. For me, it was just, I kind of fell in it. So I started sailing as a kid with my parents. We sailed around the world, actually semi-circumnavigated around the world on an Alden offshore 50. But in order to keep, with my dad, in order to keep us all happy, he wasn't worried about VMC. He didn't care how fast we went. As long as we stood our watch and didn't like go off the wrong way, we were all good. But it really did start me on the path to big boat sailing. I never did junior sailing, never sailed dinghies, didn't have that whole experience set. It did help though, because I went back to Annapolis, sailed with the North Sails Loft there, Jimmy Alsop, you guys might know him. Got a lot of great experience on the bow of big boats and got to sail in the America's Cup. And it was one of those things, the America's Cup really gives you that you do the same thing, you practice every single day, and you just learn those moves day in, day out. They are then drilled into your head. So when he talks about, when Kenny talks about, you know, like knowing how to do the bow, I know how to do the bow. I don't think about it. It is just, it's there. It's by rote. I don't have to think about how tired I am. I know what to do. But it definitely is, it pigeonholes you. It pigeonholed me as a bowman. And the great news is I hooked up with Betsy Allison, and we did an Olympic campaign back in the Inglings, did the bow, but I also got the control of this little sail up front, the jib. I learned how to sail, to trim jib on a very small jib. But it also gives you that really good respect for rig tune, but also just like how little incremental gains can really cause big gains. So we would spend days just making little tiny changes the whole way through and taking those things and learning from them and implementing them into your sailing every day. So that was key to my Olympic experience. It was 4 years to learn that skill, but you know, I got it. After the Olympic stuff, I just figured, you know what, hey, I've never driven. I need to learn how to drive. So my husband, Jed, who's here, helped me buy a J70. And I recruited my best friends. There's Dawn Riley, Katie Pettibone, Elizabeth Kratzik, if you know, they're rock star sailors. And they tried to teach me how to drive. And I have to say, it was, I thank them to this day because they were very patient. I'm grateful to them, but I found out that it's not my love, and as you know, the J70 class became a lot more competitive, a lot more professional, and it wasn't where I really wanted to be. So I ended up navigating, and navigating is what I really love. I don't know if you know, I'm a geek. I love weather, I love electronics, I love instrumentation, learning the new things, the idea of having a new boat with a new autopilot and learning how to do the H5000 autopilot, that to me, that makes me happy. And I'm sorry about that, but this was 2019. There's Kenny right back there. He's way behind us, sorry. But he actually won, he won the 12-meter world. So, you know, I chose this one picture because he's back there, but yeah, shh. So but the key is like 2019 is when it came out in the Olympics that this was going to be an offshore, there was going to be this offshore class. And I get a call from Kenny. He says, hey, you want to be my partner? And I'm like, who, me? I'm not qualified. I mean, I was doing the bow, and I've driven a little bit, and I've navigated, but I don't know how to sail trim. I don't know anything about the things that you think you need to know in order to be an offshore sailor. But as Kenny said, it's about choosing the right partner, about choosing somebody that has the skill sets that you don't have, so you have that complementary equation where somebody might be good at something that you're not good at. So court them, have them come into your program and learn from them and learn how to do what they don't know how to do. So the great news is that it wasn't just the two of us. As Kenny said, he kind of underplayed the rest of the team. But I would say two things about the pre-race prep is that it takes 5 times more time than you think it's actually going to take, and it really takes 5 times more people. So it's not a double-handed sport. It's never a short-handed sport. If you have the luxury of bringing in a team, bring them in. So we I'm going to go back. So like I said, a little bit of repetitive. The first time I stepped on the boat, Kenny said, okay, we're going to be in Fort Lauderdale. He goes, be there at 10. I was a little jet lagged. I get there at 10. He'd already been down there for 2 hours. There was a pile on the boat and a pile on the dock. It was literally, he had taken everything off the boat he wanted to. He was that's a 2-for-1 runner that he got rid of. There was a fine tune. He just starts pulling stuff off. And the best thing about Kenny is that he is meticulous. I mean, I'm sorry, Melissa, but the man, she is so right. The man just takes the time to read the rules. It was an offshore rule, not the coastal rules for the SERs. He knew what we could do, what we couldn't do to the boat. And he's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to change this stock 3300 and make it into the Kenny 3300. And I'm going to have to say, I was really fortunate of being part of this dynamic that was going on between Jeanneau and North Sails, because they took this boat that they wanted it to end up being in the Olympics, because it was still an Olympic sport at that time. And Kenny had this vision of stuff that he's always wanted to do. And he was given a boat, and he's given not a blank check, but pretty blank. And he started thinking about, like, what would he do to this boat to make it his own? And how, and in his perfect world, how would he actually make an offshore boat that would be what he would want to sail in the Olympics? So we're here. He's, he likes to tinker. I mean, the man can spend hours doing the smallest thing. But again, I learned from my Olympic campaign that that's how you make progress, is you actually spend the time to do little things. This is what he was talking about. We had a reef jib, so it's rolled up, and you turn into a blast reacher. But just sitting on the dock and doing that pre-race prep of, like, doing all those things, trying, how do we actually zip this thing? And doing it on the dock is like 10 times easier than doing it out there when you're wet and it's dark and you have no idea where the zipper is and you're getting yelled at to do it faster. But yeah, shh, don't say that. But all of these things, they're so much easier if you have a team. So the fact that Brad was there and we have Maiko, it's when you have multiple eyes. I brought in my other skill set. Glenn and Melissa, everybody. Like I said, 5. There were a lot of us out there at multiple times. You don't see them because I kind of cropped them out of the picture, but literally the ability to, I'm a videographer. I was taking the videos while he and Brad were talking through. Brad created this entire, he calls it dance moves, but there's a whole play sheet of, like, how we do each move, and we would go through it each regatta and talk about, oh, that didn't really work for us, let's modify it this way. And Melissa was there. She was shore crew. I'm sorry, but I wouldn't have survived without you. Thank you so very much. Not only, like, learning how to deal with this guy that I'd never sailed with before, because everything is a mental challenge. You're dealing with not just the physical issues of sailing, but how do you mentally work together? And sometimes you just need an advice, or you just need to be able to vent. You need to be able to, like, ask questions. And thank you, Melissa. I'm just putting that on the record. But, like, literally, this was the weekend. I don't know if you remember, but there was iguanas falling out of the trees. You've heard of that down in Fort Lauderdale. It was really cold. But having this whole ability to have people there to help you kind of do your boat work was really, really key. So lean on those people. If they ask you, how can I help, bring them into your team. Because not only will you get stronger, but we were just talking about how Ellie was talking about how you learn a lot from other people and seeing how they do it and how they would approach the problem. You can incorporate what you like and leave the rest behind. This is Kenny down there tinkering. The first thing he'd added was an inner forestay on the 3300, but literally the boat wasn't set up to have an inner forestay, so there was a whole, like, Spectra thing we had to add, but it was a new sail and like a bullet block and stuff. So I was sitting up in my harness for 2 hours? I don't know. I think I literally lost feeling in my legs on the way down, but it's one of those things where when you do this division of responsibilities in the pre-race prep, you take what your skill set is. He knows sail making. He has these ideas. I can go up the rig, that's fine. And the other thing is I had the navigation side. So I think it's really important to spend more time than you think you need on this pre-race prep. I'm sorry, I'm going to stand on my soapbox about being ready. But you get your NOR. You can read the NOR from the race from the year prior. You know where your marks are. Go out there and start downloading gribs. Start talking to people that have I'd never done this race before, Fort Lauderdale, Key West. And there's a lot of weird currents. What's the right grib to use in this place? Who's done the race before? I reached out to Anderson Reggio. He had, like, complete notes from years beforehand. But these are the things that you can do right now. You can start looking at what your schedule is, what ones you haven't done. what you can do better, what's new out there. NOAA has great new, there's new HRRR models. Trying to figure out what you can learn right now and start integrating those. That's that pre-race stuff that makes your life so much easier when you get ready to go sailing. We would start running gribs, and I would send them out to the team, not just to Kenny. I would send them to Brad and you guys, and we would end up talking it through. And the great news is, if you do that on a regular basis, let's say GFS goes out 10 days, but if it's not very accurate, but at least you start setting a picture up there, people can start, your crew can start getting their mindset around not only sail selection, what you're gonna need, but also when you're in there and you're out there racing, like, how is this comparing to what we had thought? So that whole preparation that goes into it really does help you, not just physically getting the boat ready, but mentally getting prepared. When you get to racing, I mean, we kind of stick with it, but there's just a lot more overlap. I spent a lot of time teaching Kenny how to navigate. I mean, we literally, Brad and Kenny and I, we did a 2-day session where I talked him through it, so that when we get on the boat, he knows how to go down there and look at the boxes and what they mean. And I'm kind of underselling him. He got to sit there and stare over Stan Honey's shoulder for 3 times around the world or whatever it was. So he kind of knows what he's doing. But literally, I don't think he's ever had his hand on it and had to do his own grib downloads and have to do his own analysis. So that whole side was a new thing to him. Literally, I mean, he drives 70% of the time. It's probably 70, 80, I don't know. We stick with our roles of what we're comfortable with, and the one thing that he said was so true is we don't sleep. I mean, I might have slept 20 minutes on the bow, like, because I was holding the flashlight up and it was blowing like 0. But I mean, literally, he doesn't sleep. And so I try and drive as much as I can, and he's very patient, and I've learned a ton from him. But you can feel when Kenny starts to get a little nervous, he like kind of hovers behind you. I'm like, here, take the tiller. Go ahead, dude. You can drive now. But he does go up on the bow just to dissuade anybody. He's very happy to do anything up there. But you really do fall back into what you're really good at. And if it's competitive or if there's some time going on there, you just come to know somebody. And I think that our relationship now is a lot stronger because I know when he wants something or whatever, and it just takes time in the boat. So don't expect for it to come right out the bat. The center photo is one of those things where, you know, like you all have to pitch in, because that doesn't work. And then that's what it looks like when you wake up in the morning and you're like, okay, it gets light out. You're like, oh, well, I should have. But anything that you can do to kind of keep the boat clean. I mean, keeping the halyards, you guys know, when you peel, you're like, okay, and you have to like pass it off, which halyard's on what side and all that other stuff. But this stuff, anybody can do that when you're sitting around. Just clean up the cockpit. This is a video of our first start. So Kenny's in Newport. This is actually, I'm sorry, our first start in Newport. This is his first hometown thing. We'd practice all this stuff, and we go through we'd run this whole thing, and we're like, okay, but we both had this huge brain fade, because usually we take the clue out. I'm supposed to take it and put it over the edge, and he's supposed to take the sheet and put it on the winch. But it's our first start. He was talking about being late. The plan went out the window. So we totally pooched the first start. It was really, really ugly. There's somebody to windward of us that shows up. The kite gets wrapped around the headstay. We're trying to drop it. I'm like, sorry, Kenny, I know this is your first start in your home waters. And I'm like, this is really ugly. I never saw it on social media, which was a plus. I think it was because it was COVID and there was no press out there.
Well, it is now.
Okay, there you go. But literally, it was one of those tests where I was like going, oh my God, I can't believe this is my introduction to my double-handed sailing career, and will we actually make it through the race, and will we ever, these questions are going through my head, and it really actually, you take a deep breath after it, and you kind of go through it, and it takes a little while to reset and like kind of go, okay, we fucked that up, oh, sorry, I'm not supposed to cuss, sorry. That's okay, they're gonna edit this later, right? We messed this up, we can keep going, we're gonna get it going. We obviously won the race, everything was fine, but it's just not the most auspicious start to start with. So it is, again, one of those things you have to like, okay, this is reality. Yeah, we made a mistake, fine, let's deal with it, let's keep going. It's not pretty, but there are other challenges, and I don't know if you guys have ever had this, do you know this button? I'm not allowed to say that. It's called the follow, in Simrad, it's the autopilot. And it's more about learning autopilots and things that are different in double handing than you have in other parts of sailing. I'd never used an autopilot before. And out sailing with my friends, my team, they like to look at sails, they want to do maneuvers, and we spent 0 time calibrating the autopilot. So if I can give you anything, I would say spend the time to go out there and calibrate your autopilot. There's a little button right here. If you hit this one, when you're sound asleep or you're reaching over to change the helm and you hit it, it's called follow up. You hit it, it locks the tiller and it rounds the boat up. So we call it the FU button. That's what's actually named there. And I just, there's things that I love and I hate about offshore sailing, about double-handed sailing, and this is not one of my favorite things, just so you know. The next middle one is about safety. And I just believe, I'm one of those people that says, buy anything you can afford. Get all the equipment, learn how to use it, take all the courses, but if you don't actually use it when you're out there, or if you don't practice with it, it's not worth it. But to me, that's one of the biggest challenges that I see about shorthanded racing is you never really actually get to practice. If all goes well, sorry. You never get to practice the bad parts. You never get to practice the messes up. But the more that you are prepared for it, the more that you're ready to do it. Literally, this is the back toe one. I always have this vision before I'd ever went off sailing with him. That I'm like, what happens if I'm up there on the bow, he's down below, I fall overboard, and I wanted to have that safety harness that actually flips you around and tows you from the back in case he doesn't hear me like yelling, Kenny, come save me. So I take every precaution that I can personally because I have a family and I want to make sure that I'm not like going out there hanging out with Kenny and not coming back. But that's a challenge to me that I find one of the hardest things about shorthanded racing. It goes to my mind before I leave. But the other thing that comes down to is exhaustion. We talk about not sleeping while we're sailing, but it does lead to a little bit of lapses in judgment. We had done that, the Fort Lauderdale to Key West race, and it was before the light was coming up, and there'd been a squall coming through, and we just start going 0. We're going 0, we're going backwards. So I'm like, this is just bad. And then in that whole series, I don't ever remember saying, hey, let's back down. This is the side of the boat you're looking down. This is a whole branch. There's like a whole palm tree wrapped around our keel. It was just really, really bad, but we weren't cognizant enough to kind of say, what's going wrong? What should we fix? What do we normally do? If you have more people there, you have more brain cells firing. We never really thought about backing down. And even here, sailing our last race, coming up around Block Island, coming on that leg back into Narragansett Bay, and Kenny and I looked at each other and go, this time we are going to remember, we're going to make a pact that when we tack, we're going to remember to shift the water balance. Did we remember to shift? No. We tack, I'm driving. Kenny starts running around the boat going, the boat feels weird. What's going on? What's wrong with the boat? And it's because we forgot. He finally goes, we forgot to shift the water ballast. So it's one of those things where exhaustion is your enemy, and that's the downside of double-handed sailing. But we're going to fix that this year, okay? I'm messing that one up again. That comes back to that whole team thing, deciding on what you're going to do. He and Brad have this discussion. I don't know if you know Brad and Kenny's relationship, but they have a very, it's a loving adversarial relationship, I'll describe it as. I try to stay out of it as much as possible, but sometimes decisions get made and then we'll go on with it. But I think that one of the things we were talking about is that time when you hit the dock and you're exhausted and I'm like, would I ever do this again? I'm like, God, no, never. I'm never doing this double-handed thing again. And then you go home and you take a shower, you eat some food, you get a little sleep, you wake up, you go to the awards ceremony, and you're like, not so bad, whatever. And then like a couple months later, somebody calls you up and says, hey, you want to do this again? And I'm like, hey, that sounds like a great idea. I'm like, either I need a lobotomy or it's just really not that bad. But I just have to say it's a really pleasure. The reason I keep coming back is because it's not like any other sailing I do. And I fell into it. I never had a vision that I was going to be a double-handed or short-handed offshore sailor. I just find it as being fulfilling because it gives me something that I don't get from other parts of sailing. And I have learned so much. It's made me a better sailor. And it does actually, I do want to keep doing it because I feel that it does, I learn something every time. And Kenny is, you might not believe it, but he's like one of the best coaches out there. He's probably dealt with a lot of very rich owners, and so he has to be nice to them. But I think that I get out of his sailing, he has taught me things that I would never learn anywhere else. So I can't thank you guys so much for making the program actually happen, and thank you for inviting me as your co-skipper, but it's been a lot of fun.
Nice job. Perfect. Do we have any questions for Suzy? Yeah?
Yeah, let's, can we talk a little bit about communication?
We can get her husband up here with her if you want.
If you're good at the navigation, does Kitty relent to you on the navigation?
Nope.
And as far as sail trim, do you relent to him? Do you discuss it? Or who's the real, is there a leader? Or are you married?
That's a really we'll leave the marriage part aside, but the good thing is that by doing that pre-race prep, I'm going to address the navigation side. By doing the pre-race prep and talking through what we expect is going to happen in the navigation side of things, what we're really looking for is the weather, and if what's happening and what we're seeing right now relates to what's actually happening with the weather. And the great thing about Kenny is he's got a very retentive memory. He remembers what I told him before the start, and I'll say, okay, and I'll download a new grid, and I'll be like, okay, well, this weather forecast is either it's looking like this model or that model, or it's 10 hours ahead of whatever. But he really does understand that. So I am helping him in that communication side by trying to make those connections, trying to say, hey, listen, this is what you saw, this is what and so he does feel from me from that side. From the sail trimming side, it's all him. Sorry, I'll like go down there and he'll be like, okay, you need to let the outboard lead. So I'll let the outboard lead and I'll trim it a little bit, and he goes, no, he goes more. I'll let it out a little bit more and I'll look at it, and then he'll come down and like slam it where it needs to be because he knows that. And I don't have a problem with that. I think if he came and like overruled me on something that I felt strongly about and came up on the bow and said, oh no, we should be doing it that way, I'd be like, just go back there and drive, leave me alone. But because I know that that's my thing. So I do find that there's times when I'll stand my ground and I will fight for it. And there's times where I'll be like, no, please, can you just take it over? Because I know that, and it could also be exhaustion or lack of, but there's really, you have to be able to just say, please, I know this is your thing, this is your gig, but I also have no problem. And it was intimidating at first. I'm sorry, you're intimidating. But it's worked out, and I think that time in the boat has helped. This would be our 4th year. We did 2020, 21, yeah, well, 3rd year.
Yeah, 4th year.
So.
Anything else, Joe? For some reason, one more in the back. Yep.
Yeah. So where do you find like all the kind of like latest things that you're talking about for navigating?
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm going to tell us about our life in bed. He goes to bed at 10 o'clock. I'm up till like 3 a.m. I am like looking around.
This is too much information.
Sorry, should you say?
Jesus Christ.
Jen or Kenny?
No, not me.
No, I
Sorry,
will literally spend my off time. Some people watch TikTok. I'm sorry. I spend my time, I'm a geek, and I will go and read what's currently happening. But again, I would say talk to the people that you know. I think this community is fantastic in the fact that they like to share, and the more that we share, the more that we encourage other people to be involved. So feel free. He's going to put up an email address. You can text me, email me. But also, I think that we're going to talk a little bit more about trying to create a community, trying to create an atmosphere, a space where we can all get together. And I would love to have a navigator session. And we can all sit together and talk about because I don't know everything. I get it. I love learning from other people. So if we had that ability to sit down and have something in April where we all get to share because it's evolving. So it's not a bad question, and I don't have all the answers, but I would love to organize that.
One thing that Ellie said before is she uses Adrena, for example, which is the software package to help route the boat, and Suzy uses Expedition. So all navigators have all kinds of different tricks. I sail with a ton of different navigators, and they all have different tricks. I think they do that for job security because they make it as hard as humanly possible for the rest of us to figure it out. But there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat. But I know for sure, not being at all an instrument geek, that it's intimidating. It's super intimidating. But once you figure it out, and once you see a pro go ripping through these pages and come up, I ask questions. Like when we go around the race course, I'll ask a question, and she'll either have anticipated it and know it's coming, or be able to answer it like that. And
or I'll say, hold on, I need to go back down and take the answer. Because I don't ever want to give him wrong information. And I'll say, I think this is what it is, but just give me 5 minutes. And that's actually the hardest thing, is sometimes just say, listen, I just need more time.
That's okay.
5 minutes.
You good?
Oh, come on.
She answered my question.
Okay.
Okay. I thought my brother wanted to roast me here for a second. You're doing a good enough job. Get off the stage. Get off the stage.
What do you got?
Suzy was asked a question about, the team, right? Who makes the decisions at the end of the day? And Kenny does a really good job of coaching, as we've talked about. And he gets us involved because we have different skill sets. And that's a really important thing. But at the end of the day, someone's got to make the decision. And Kenny does a really good job of getting that information and then making the decision. Sometimes it's not the one you want him to make, but generally it's the right one. Because we've given him, as the leader, the information he needs to make a decision. And that's important in double-handed deal or a crude boat. Someone has to make the final call. And you all have to figure out who that is. But someone has to make the final call.
I don't think democracies work.
It does not.
No.
I've been married 7 times. Sorry, love, but I don't think they
So just think about that as you go through your preparation. But he's a great leader, he's a great teammate, and that's the nicest thing I've ever
No kidding. I don't even know who you
wow.
are anymore. This
Brad.
is unbelievable. All right. So, and again, we're going to put contacts up at the end, and we really want you guys to reach out to us because, again, we know we can't answer specifics, but hopefully these, by the way, Suzy, thank you. That was perfect. Thank you. All right, on to Glenn. And like I said, I started out on this mission really thinking about the Olympics when it was announced as potentially an Olympic event, this co-ed double-handed. And that's when I got connected with Jeannot North America. Jeannot North America kind of passed, because I was up here, kind of passed the ball to Glenn. Glenn, I don't know, you'll tell us, but either made the huge mistake or the great fortune of picking the baton up and running with us. It's been a wonderful relationship. Glenn, in his own right, has done some really good sailing on his own. He'll tell us about the Bermuda race this past year. But anyway, Glenn, just on behalf of the community, thank you for your sponsorships are making a lot of these events happen. So thank you for being here. Thank Bluenose for being part of tonight, but just thank you for helping double-handed sailing.
Thank you. That's a big one there.
Right hand. Yep.
Okay. They say stand here, and then you have these bright lights. So anyway, I'm not sure what this who this right-hand photograph is, because honestly, I looked at it a couple of times. I said, "Is that Kenny?" No, it's not. It looks like John Bon Jovi. John Bon Jovi. but all kidding aside, no, actually, more kidding aside, the bandana shot I owe to Kate, who photoshopped it in, and it's not true. But before I go any further, I do want to point out that Kate Haynes is here, and she runs my office, and many times when I can't walk. We got Jonathan Banks here. Stand up, Jonathan. Stand up, Kate, please. Jonathan Banks has been promoting and selling and marketing performance sailing, and specifically the 3300. And then somewhere out there in the audience, we have Richard Barker. Stand up, Richard. So, if you don't mind. So Richard Barker is our Saphir product manager. We are the second largest dealer in the world, and we're selling more day boats, performance day boats in the United States than anybody, I believe, at least of this genre. Feel free to see either any one of these folks whenever you want to, but the Saphir is certainly a product that is in the performance range, but it's also a luxury performance. Oh, I forgot, Marshall Bailey. Where is he? I almost overloaded. Marshall, stand up. Marshall has been really instrumental in helping Kenny and helping Bluenose Yachts and putting these boats together and getting them to run a little bit faster than otherwise. So as I was preparing for tonight, you know, there's a lot of common themes that you hear, and they're not by, you know, coincidence per se. They're common themes because, you know, they permeate our industry and they permeate who we are. So, you know, I was looking back in preparation for this slide and found, lo and behold, that I think one of my first double-handed races was with my son, better part of 15 or 17 years ago, Darren. And we took a couple of little plaques here and there. And then more recently, in this past year, we had the opportunity and took it to take, as people call it, Kenny's boat, to Bermuda, Alchemist. And it was a great run. We enjoyed ourselves. It sailed fast. And lo and behold, you know, my son is still smiling here after 700 miles and 3.5 days. And Darren is his name. He's a great racer in his own right. He's done since then, since, you know, my bringing him into the double-handed field and racing. He's done transatlantic races. He's done many Bermuda races. He's done the Fastnet race. And, you know, he's a pleasure to sail with, without a doubt. And as Ellie already pointed out, you know, there's something about the family element of this, whether it's in shore prep or whether it's in sailing with another family member. There's bonding, and sometimes there's not bonding, but you know, we get along. And you know, in this case, you know, in this case, you know, my son, you know, and I had a discussion about whether or not we should do this race double-handed. And so before I let Kenny ask me why we didn't do it double-handed, because he promised me there would be no hard questions, hardball questions. You know, I had this dialogue with my son Darren about double-handed to Bermuda, and I was pretty keen on it because the idea of having 2 people plus Mr. Otto it sounded a little bit more appealing than having 4 people, which we ended up racing with, and having to hand steer. But we did the latter in part because probably my son didn't trust racing with me for 3.5 days or whatever it turned out to be. So this is a little bit of a video of where we're en route. As I mentioned, we had a team of 4. We set some course records, I believe, in terms of smallest boat under 35 feet and shortest time. We had, honestly, the right boat. We had the right conditions, and we had a great team, and we had, as Kenny has already said, and others, you know, we had the right preparation. It really was a thrill for me at one point in time to be down below trying to catch some shut-eye and to hear these 2 30-year-olds up top just yelping and laughing and having a ball as they were trying to beat each other's speed record. And, you know, when the boat's going 22 knots, 23 knots, there can be a lot of fun, and then there's a lot of laughter. You know, it's been talked about, you know, what we are doing as a race sponsor, and you know, that's an important element also of, you know, what we do and what our industry is all about, because let's face it, this is a community, and it's a community where we want to give back, and sometimes we can afford it, sometimes we can't afford it. Kenny's always pushing that limit a little bit, but I appreciate the opportunity to be a race sponsor, because it really is a privilege to be a sponsor. And I'm not sure if these slides are a little bit out of whack. Did I skip over one? No. Anyway, we'll just continue. So, speaking of sponsorships, it is a privilege to be a sponsor. As you can see in this slide, we had a team, 2 women, who brought the boat back. Now, was there an ulterior motive in my decision to give Alchemist to 2 beautiful women who are bright and talented and have them race back? Yeah, because I didn't have to sail a boat back. So that was my ulterior motive. But independent of that motive, I certainly welcome the opportunity to get or meet and greet 2 women who are very experienced, who had not really raced the boat. They had not really raced together. They came into Bermuda, what is her name? Cat Hunt, Cat Hunt came in from the UK, also friends with Ellie. Sarah Stone, which Kenny already mentioned, she was in the area, so actually she was in Bermuda, so we flew her out. And lo and behold, with 6 hours of going over what the boat was about, what the sail selection was about, they blasted out of there. They had some really slow days, and they had some fun days. But at the end of the day, guess what? They were able to overcome, you know, the challenges of learning the boat and sailing the boat, even though they didn't know the boat well. And they placed first in their division, placed first overall. Clearly an amazing opportunity to not only sponsor them, but to see them enjoy it and have such a great time. So why do we have the double-handed enthusiasm and growth, as some of you have heard? And you know, it won't come as any surprise to you is that you know, there is a lot of work, but as the slide says, and it was prepared by Jonathan, you know, we've got double-handed is more than double the fun. You've got fewer crew to organize. You've got a community of enthusiastic sailors who are willing to not only help and give advice and give inputs. And there's a growing number of double-handed races that, whether it's in the UK or whether it's in France or whether in the United States, this happens to be a husband and wife team out of Long Island. The name of the boat is Bite, Rob, and Libby?
Libby
Alexander. Yeah,
yep.
Thank you. So there's a great selection of whether it's special purpose boats or double-handed boats. The boats cost less to campaign, fewer sandwiches, fewer snacks, fewer beers. But it is really, you know, an ultimate a challenge that you can derive satisfaction. And Ellie spoke very well to that. You know, the satisfaction of completing one of these races doesn't make any difference where you finish, because just completing the race is great satisfaction, and then improving upon the performance that you had before that. So it is a very intense, in-the-moment experience from what I've seen in double-handed racing and short-handed racing, and it's fun. It's fun to have that satisfaction that, you know, you're in the moment. There's a lot of demand. I already mentioned there's many opportunities to race double-handed. You know, I suggest that you think about putting one in your bucket list. Try one. Yeah, you may find you love it as much as Ellie and Kenny and Suzy. Lights are a little dark here. So it's fun, it's competitive, it's growing, as we've said, both in the US and the UK. We have had the opportunity to speak with Ellie and some of her cohorts in the UK in order to understand how they have helped build and support the idea of double-handed racing, whether it's because you're doing it with family, whether you're doing it with friends. So there's plenty of opportunities. This is by no means a complete list because there's some races that have already been mentioned that, you know, we couldn't fit on the slide. But try it. So coming in 2023, just as one quick slide, in part because it is the possibility for an Olympic event in the future. We have the Jeanneau Sunfast 30 one design. It's just been recently announced. There's not a lot of information out there, so bear with us, but this is some information. It's going to be double-handed or short-handed. It's going to be truly a one design class. There are going to be some charter fleets that are going to be set up in France and the UK. There is already a regatta series that's being created. So far the name is Cap Regatta, whether or not that stays or not. The whole genesis of this boat has come out of the Storm Tristle, the RORC, as well as Yacht Club de France, in order to try to promote not only the boat, but one design for youth, one design for mixed genders, and with a little bit of luck, this will be perhaps an Olympic class event in the future. So, Kenny also started to mention, you know, this is a community, and we're certainly trying to sponsor and build a community, and one of the items that we're adding to our objectives this year is to come up with something similar to what Ellie spoke about in the UK, a double-handed championship series. We've mentioned 5 races here, which if you participate in 3, then you qualify. You can change your crew, and we're going to be taking inputs from not only people in this room, but outside in the UK as to how to make this fun and how to make it inspiring to get more people involved in double-handed racing. So think about it. It's fun. Put it in your bucket list. I don't think you'll be disappointed. This is another one. I somehow lost some slides, but I guess my last slide was supposed to be a thank you to not only all of you for participating and being here tonight, but also, more importantly, to thank North Sails, Kenny Reed, the team, Bluenose Yachts team, and I had a question for Kenny. Do you have time for one Kenny Reed story? Right, it's in the theme. It's in the theme.
Is it clean?
Yeah, of course it's clean. Of course it's clean. I leave Suzy to tell the other that are not clean. So, you know, Kenny went over his 7 points, and one of the biggest points was weight. So I tell this story on a repeated basis because for me it was interesting. So I think it was last year, and we had already removed a lot of the weight and things, and people sometimes say, well, so what's the secret sauce here? What is Kenny doing? You know, how is he winning all these races? And apart from attention to detail and all the other things he spoke about. So I'm on the boat in the spring, and Kenny's down there, and he's putting together his list, and he says, Glenn, we got to remove the VHF antenna from the top of the mast. I said, Kenny, are you serious? We're going to remove? Why? And he starts giving me all these reasons why. And I said, Kenny, come on. He said, Glenn, do you want to lose by 1 second? And I said to him, I said, Kenny, honestly, if I lose by 1 second, that means I'm still coming in second, and that feels pretty good. And then I thought about it a little more, and guess what? The VHF antenna came off. So again, Kenny, you have been tremendous to work with. I've learned a lot. I've been challenged by you. I enjoy the opportunity, and seriously, I couldn't have done it without you and North Sails and the team that we have, and you've been inspiring, and thank you, thank you, thank you.
Appreciate it, Glenn.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. So especially with concern to the series, does anybody and the sponsorship?
Kenny.
Any questions for Glenn from the audience? I have one question. Oh. So to that series, yeah. What do you think the start? Because Ellie's example is they have a core. They have 2 or 3 people who are kind of in charge of their series, right? Mm. So and amazingly enough, they're not in the industry. I mean, you and I are in the industry. We're here tonight. We're in the industry. We're trying to give back. We're trying to, you know, we're trying to do it all, right? She's not. She's just doing it because, unlike you and me, she's actually a really good person, and she's doing it for all the right reasons. So to you two both, so like Ellie, how did you guys come up with this kind of volunteer leadership in order to create this camaraderie? Because I think we're missing that, frankly. I know some people have tried to do it in the past, and I don't know. Joe, you probably know more about this in the Wayback Machine than we do, but how do we start the ball rolling to create this series or potential series?
So for us, it was Henry that really started the idea of the series, and that we needed something to bring us all together. But initially, so there's the 3 of us that run it now, but initially there was 10, 15 people involved in how we were going to do it and what people wanted. So it was very much a community input. What people want is what we're going to create. At the end of each series, I send out like a form that goes, what do you think of this series? What do you want next series? So it's very much what the sailors want is kind of what the sailors get, is what we do.
And how did these 3 people come into this role?
It was Nigel Colley, who runs the Geno
yeah.
dealership in in England that said to Henry, "Oh, you should get Ellie on the social media." So that's how I got involved. And Kate, who does a lot of it, is she's just retired and has got a real drive and passion for helping people out and getting the team together. So a lot of it comes down to her.
So I think the bottom line is, I guess what I'm driving at is, we're going to need some help with this. So if anybody's interested in kind of becoming part of this trustee group to help package this thing, as one of your old time, as Bob Johnstone used to say, the J24 class never would have been the J24 class without Thursday night beer and hot dogs at Bluenose Yacht Club. It was all about the camaraderie and the party after Thursday night racing, and before you know it, you know, they sold 5,000 boats. So I think, you know, we're going to need help. So any of you out there, again, our contact information, any of you out there that wants to be part of maybe putting something bigger together, it's huge. Without that, you know, there shouldn't be 15 boats in the solo twin. There should be 50 boats in the solo twin, for example. It's this legend event that is a blast to do. The Idlewild distance race, whatever, you know, Block Island race, all these races. Just we sent out a couple flyers, and all of a sudden there's 150 people here tonight. There's obviously the interest, but we need somebody to help tie it together. And Glenn, is that fair to say?
It's more than fair, and it's something that we've spoken about, and it's something that we are very thankful to get more inputs and have more participation.
Any other questions before? Yep, right.
Yeah, Kenny, is PHRF New England involved in any of this, or?
So they are in some of those races. Like I think there's several people here from the Boston area, from the Cape area tonight. When I did the when Melissa and Suzy and I did the around Eggertown race, that was PHRF New England. They have a whole separate, like a double-handed rating system for double-handed. So they actually might be even a little bit further ahead than other areas are.
So does the sound.
So does the sound, yeah.
Certificates.
And I just want to reiterate, like, especially in Long Island Sound, there's been people who have been preaching double-handed racing for a long, long time before we got up here on our pulpit. And they're the people that really, the people that should be thanked. They're the ones that we should have been inspired by a long time ago, and there's probably several of you out there that have been doing this for a long time. But yeah, so I really think trying to build the community, as we've all said tonight. There's a couple things that stand out for me. One is family and how easy it is. You know, all of our, you know, Susie's become family. Glenn's sailing with his son. Ellie's sailing with her dad. I'm sailing with my brother. It's a built-in crew that you can really kind of kick the shit out of if you need to. So let's just keep that. It's really, whether it's, you know, father, daughter, mother, son, mother, whatever it is, it kind of opens your eyes, because I think we all get engraved. We got to go get these hot shots to go sail and get into the positions on the boat, and big, strong people. Strength has never been, even any sailing I've ever done, strength has never become even one tiny quotient of picking a partner for double-handed racing. And you would think it would be just the opposite. It isn't. It's all-purpose sailors, and very often look under your own hood, and there's the person that you should be sailing with. And you're still talking to your old man, right? Is it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
okay. I know you guys don't have Thanksgiving over there, but you still communicate on holidays and things like that?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
All friends still. I'm in charge, that's why.
Okay, there you go. It is not a democracy. Remember that. So, any other questions? What? Yep.
It's just a comment. Actually, Ellie, this is really directed at you. 11 years ago, I did my first double-handed race at the age of 50. You are an inspiration to me.
Oh,
Cute.
And I thank you.
thank you.
Very nice. Any others? Okay, one final thing, and this is whether it's a sales meeting or whatever it is, when I talk to a crowd, a night like tonight can become overwhelming if you try to remember everything. Pick 3 things out of tonight. Pick 3 things that you want to incorporate into your program this year. It doesn't sound like much, but when you start evolving these 3 things, all of a sudden it turns into a bigger thing. It's overwhelming to hear all of our stories and all of our little anecdotes and all of our little details of how we're trying to do things. But if you just pick 3 things out of tonight, it'll make you have more fun. You'll enjoy sailing more. You'll enjoy who you're sailing with more. You'll enjoy this shorthanded experience. So like Glenn said, on behalf of Bluenose, on behalf of all of us at North Sails, we really appreciate you coming here tonight. Everybody went out of their way. We've really enjoyed it. Help yourself. There's some more food and beer over here. Please drive safely. And thank you very much for coming.